Hello, my dear students. Welcome to week 9 of this semester. And in this week, we are going to look at task planning. And task planning is the first phase to task development. In the past weeks, we've looked at characteristics of highly effective tasks, concepts concerning aspects such as validity, reliability, practicality, and objectivity. We've also looked at task-wise strategies, in addition to looking at item types as well as the development of high-quality items, effective and ineffective items. Now, all those topics lead to this task planning. And I would like to believe that you have acquired sufficient knowledge base to get you to constructing high quality table of specifications. Now, what exactly is task planning and what exactly is table of specifications? Task planning is the first stage to task development. So before you can actually develop your first item, before you can actually do that, you need to plan for your task first. Now, when you plan for your task, it does increase or improve your content validity significantly. It is a very important aspect to task development. And in task planning, my voice is cracking, just bear with me. So in task planning, we do prepare a document known as a table of specifications. Now, if you do have a table of specification for your task, then that is actually a planning document for that particular task. So I'm going to open up my slide here, which is downloadable from my MOOC page. So similar approach taken by architects in developing building. Before they can start constructing the building, architects need to have a blueprint. And this blueprint serves as framework to building constructions. Similarly, in assessments, particularly tasks and examinations, before we can actually develop our task, we need to have a blueprint for that task. And this blueprint is represented by a stage known as task planning. It is the first stage to task development. And in planning, teachers prepare one document known as table of specifications. I hope I make it clear. Okay, so other names for TOS or table of specifications is task specifications or task blueprint. Now, teachers in school call this Jadwal Spesifikasi Ujian or JSU. They are the same documents. So you can read the rest of the information presented in these slides yourself. I will be asking through Q&A session about some of the principles and the requirements for developing TOS. But in this video, the focus of this video is to show you how do we go about constructing and filling in our TOS document. All right, so basically there are a lot of TOS samples or formats that you can refer to for your tests. This is one of it. It can also look like this. So whatever the format is, they need to have distinctive information, very crucial information, such as the topics and subtopics. And these could also be learning outcomes, the number of items, what is the type of these items, the marks for each of the item, as well as the levels on your taxonomy. So for this test, I'm using Bloom's taxonomy cognitive domain. Hence, I have all these 6 levels stated here based on its increasing levels of complexity. Okay, so let's look at a sample of how a TOS look like. This is an example of a TOS for the subject of physical and health education. So let's look at the details here. So we have topics and subtopics. These are also learning outcomes. So in real life, when teachers decide what aspect of content should I be assessing in my test, they look at their lesson plans and they look back at their lessons and see what were the outcomes which the lessons planned or intended to achieve. Okay, teachers can also refer to the curriculum. In this respect, we will be looking at document standard curriculum and pentaksiran, which contains a very detailed list of everything that teachers must achieve in their teaching and learning activities. Okay, so basically what we do is specifying the content which the test aim to assess here. Remember that the name is Table of Specifications. Hence, general statements will not be sufficient. When you formulate or phrase your learning outcomes or the content to be assessed here, they must be stated in specific manner. Now, I will demonstrate that when we look at how do we fill up the TOS. So next to topics and subtopics are the number of items. So we have here the principles, concepts, and application of basic sciences in relation to motor skills and movement activities. This is one topic, and it is taken verbatim from the DSKP. So this is still general. We must make it more specific. So when we look at more specifically on this topic, we can basically specify this general statement into 3 specific subtopics. So I have here from this topic, motor development and motor learning, anatomy and physiology, exercise physiology, biomechanics, and kinesiology. So in my test, the items which I have will be representing these 3 subtopics. Now let's look at each subtopic in detail. This is how we should be filling up each row that we have here. All right, so let's look at motor development and motor learning. So it gets me thinking, how many items should I have in my test in order for me to ask this particular subtopic? Maybe 2, so I'll just put 2 here. And for these 2 items, I want these items to be MCQ. So I'll just state MCQ. And how many marks should I give for each of these questions? So 1 mark for one multiple choice. So I have 2 marks in total here. And in relation to which levels of cognitive complexity do my items represent? So I have decided at this point of test planning that for these 2 items and for the subtopic, I want these 2 items to be of remembering level. So you just need to tick under specific cognitive process. Okay, so this is how I fill up my table of specifications. If the task aims to assess 5 topics, for example, then it will be consisting of 5 topics here with detailed specifications for each of the topics in the next column. Okay, so in the last row, I have total. This is when I total up all this information I've presented earlier in the table. So this total row, okay, I'm just going to call it that, basically is very, very important because it does give us an overview of what your task essentially represents. So I know now that my task consists of 10 items, and the total marks from this test is 20 marks. And I also have information with regard to how many questions do I have under each specific cognitive process. So how come I have 4 here when I only have like 2 ticks? This is because this number represents the number of items for each level of thinking. So we have 2 MCQs from the first subtopic And we also have two MCQs from this particular subtopic, so we have 4. Hence, it allows us to look at whether have we constructed or have we planned questions that tap into all the various levels of cognitive processes. Okay, so basically that's what TOS is about. Basically, it represents our plan to developing items. Just to let you know that when we develop our TOS, it should be before we even construct our first test item. Okay, so some teachers or us or you in the future might develop your task first, then only you prepare your task. So that's not the correct approach to task development. Before you actually develop your task, you need to plan for your task first. So before developing your first item, develop your task first. Okay? And at the point of planning, sometimes we do plan for the most effective tasks, but in the process of constructing your test items, you suddenly find out that, okay, I cannot develop, for example, analyze item from this topic, but I can do analysis item from this topic better, for example. So TOS is an ongoing document, though we have developed our TOS before we even construct our items. But while constructing our items, we can always adjust our TOS as well. I do have several FAQs here, which I would like to, discuss so that you will be in better light when you are actually developing your TOS. Can you give more marks than the actual scores? So say, for example, your test only constitute like 10% of the overall assessment scores. But suddenly, when you develop your TOS, you have 20 marks here. Is it okay? It's totally fine. Because if your test, for example, carries raw marks of 50%, when in actuality your test only constitutes 10%, you can always like convert the percentage to 10% later. So it's okay. As long as if the test is 10% and you have questions that accurately represent learning of 10%. You know what I mean? So it's okay to have more marks than the actual marks that you give to students in your report later. All right, so second questions. How should I arrange the topics and subtopics in my TOS? Because I do get these questions often, and my students in the past tended to arrange the topics and subtopics based on the order of how they should appear in the test. Remember that at the point of us preparing the TOS, we have not even constructed our item. So how are we supposed to know at this point of TOS development the sequence of how the test item should appear? So at the point of developing your TOS or filling up your TOS, you have to arrange the topics and subtopics based on the order of this on your document standard curriculum and pentaksiran, because this is the sequence of how these topics are taught in your lessons. All right. So can I prepare my TOS after I develop my test? Can, tapi I cubit sampai lebam. Tak boleh ya. You must develop your TOS first, then only you proceed with item construction. All right. I hope that this is clear. You have the gist of how TOS can be filled up, and you also understand the importance of having TOS for your tests. So now we are going to get cracking and developing one TOS just for fun. Okay, so I'm just going to close this. Right. Okay, so I'm just going to go to my tutorial sheet. So this is where I'm going to demonstrate how do we construct our TOS. Right. So in the course of developing this step-by-step tutorial of TOS, I'm going to use Pendidikan Seni Visual. And this is the SKP of PSV for Form 2. If this is your first time looking at the SKP, I'm also going to cubit sampai lebam because you should have like familiarized yourself with this document ages ago, like at least early this semester when we have started looking at our assignment. Okay, so I'm just going to make it bigger so that you have a gist or an understanding of how a DSKP look like and also its content. Okay, so let's just browse through. This is a wonderful document. It really is useful to teachers because it does contain a very practical guide that teachers can use to frame their teaching and learning activities. So I'm just going to go straight to page. We have bidang, specific areas that the content look at for that particular year. So under PSV, we have this topic. If I'm not mistaken, there are 11 topics altogether. What I want you to look at is this cadangan masa or recommended hours for your TNL or PDPC. So this is important because this basically provides information with regard to your assessment weightage. So say, for example, that all of these are cognitive domain. Yes, they are not, because PSV is meant to capture all the learning within all the three domains. It's fine. But just say, for example, humor me, that these are all learning within cognitive domain. So if the rest of the topics are equally distributed 3 hours, and then we have one topic that consists only 2 hours. So this weightage should also be reflected sufficiently in your test. So say, for example, we have a test that looks at 3 topics, sejarah dan apresiasi, seni halus, dan reka bentuk. And we know that all of the other subtopics require 3 hours of exploration. So 9 hours for these 2 topics and only 2 hours for one topic. Hence, when you prepare your test item, you should have a lot more items from these 2 topics in comparison to the first topic. Now, this is also the thing that I will be looking at when I score your submission of this assignment. Okay? Right, so moving on. I'm just going to make it smaller so that it's easier for me to look at. My screen is so big. I'm sorry, guys. So this is the first topic, sejarah dan apresiasi seni visual. I'm just saying this just to get you an understanding of how the SKP is structured. So this is the main page for each topic, and this topic is detailed on the subsequent pages. So this is the subtopics of sejarah dan apresiasi seni visual. Okay, so the thing about pendidikan seni visual, this also encompass other disciplines as well, is that learning is within all the 3 domains of learning. Remember when I said that you need to know the most dominant domain which your learning is on, because it is important to guide you in deciding which taxonomy should you use. So this is it, guys. This is the time when you need to decide that. So when we basically constructing our test, you need to make sure that the test aims to measure which domain specifically. So the purpose of this assignment, the purpose of this major project is to measure learning within cognitive domain, because we are developing items based on Bloom's taxonomy for that domain. Okay, so when you are deciding which topic should make into my test, be very sure that these topics are in fact learning under cognitive domain and not the other 2 domains. Because the other 2 domains can be constructed into tests, but not tests for measuring cognitive. Okay, So let's look at sejarah dan apresiasi seni visual to better demonstrate what I've just said. So under this particular topic, we have 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4. So let's look at each of these just to get like the vibe of how do we decide or go about deciding what domains do each of these subtopics spark on. Okay, persepsi seni dalam seni ragam, and you can read the rest. I was just about to say blah 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 blah, and then I realized this is a YouTube video. Okay. Menjelaskan seni ragam hias, pengangkutan alat permainan, alat domestik. So please also look at catatan because catatan will contain information with regard to the recommended assessment task to assessing this content. Okay. Okay, you can read this. It looks like it's cognitive. Let's move on further. Well, basically, teachers will have decided this when they are developing their lesson plan for this content. But because we don't have lesson plan and we are going to take content from the SKP to decide what to assess for our test, so we are just going to be doing that decision making while looking at the SKP. Okay? So 1.2, eksplorasi seni dalam seni ragam, blah, 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 blah. And mengenal pasti tokoh seni ragam hias. That looks like a cognitive learning. And number 2, meneroka motif seni ragam hias. Okay, so when we look at catatan, the recommended task is, of course, it's secara collaborative. So this is a group work. Membuat kajian tokoh dan motif seni ragam hias dengan menggunakan pendekatan kaedah station. So basically what the SKP is suggesting for this particular content, the best way to assess the learning of these students is by getting them to do kajian tokoh. Hence, if you have assessed student learning for this content using kajian tokoh, then you don't have to assess the learning of this in your test anymore. Unless if you feel like I need more data with regard to this topic. But if this one assessment is enough, you don't have to reassess or assess again in another assessment. It could lead to redundancy. Okay, remember what I said, if one evidence is enough, why ask for two? Just stick with one. Don't make the life of your students miserable. Okay, let's look at number 3, 1.3, ekspresi seni. And then let's look at this one, menghasilkan dokumentasi perkembangan seni ragam halus pengangkutan. And the task is menyediakan portfolio. So this should be assessed by portfolio assessment. So portfolio assessment is very detailed. We don't need to assess this again in our test. Hence, we can drop this sub-content. Looking at the last one, mempamerkan hasil karya, menghayati dan menjelaskan hasil karya sendiri dan rakan, and the rest. So this looks like learning within psychomotor because as well as effective because the recommended activities are menjana persembahan, membuat pemerhatian, mengemukakan pengalaman sendiri dalam penghasilan karya. These are not test-related skills. Hence, all these 4 subtopics, topic 1, we don't need to assess topic 1 in our test because the learning for topic 1 is assessed through the use of other forms of assessment. Okay, moving on. I'm just going to go straight to, well, you can read the rest. My art students, of course, my physical and health education students, my TESOL students, my APB students will have to look at their disciplines and deciding which one can make into the test and which one should be assessed through the use of other forms of assessment. But mathematics is definitely cognitive. Okay, it's quite easy to decide on mathematics, logics, rational justifications. Most of the time, they are parked under cognitive domain. Right, so I'm just going to go to 4.0. I have gone overboard. Let's get back. Okay. So 4.0 is seni cetakan under the bidang of seni halus. And if we were to look at this without skimming through the objective in the subsequent pages, let's just look at this. Menjelaskan definisi that looks like remember. Membuat eksperimentasi, okay, maybe psychomotor. We will have to look at this in more detail later. Menterjemahkan hasil daripada eksperimentasi, mempamerkan, menghayati. Okay, so the rest do not look like learning within cognitive domain, but 4.1 is. Let's look at 4.1. It's very important that you use your skills or your understandings of Bloom's taxonomy when you are deciphering this document. If you were to look at the use of verbs, menjelaskan, memperihalkan, menerangkan, menjelaskan. So these are verbs that are related to cognitive domain. So that's one way of you deciding whether this is cognitive, affective, or psychomotor through the use of verbs. And also the use of verbs will tell us which level of cognitive process does each of these learning intended to aim for. So menjelaskan definisi, definitely remember, though I don't like the word menjelaskan here, I think a better way to phrase this is mendefinisikan cetakan, because that will be more straightforward, but it's okay. Memperihalkan, menerangkan, menjelaskan. Now, menerangkan and menjelaskan are verbs under understanding, second level. Memperihalkan could either be second level understanding or analysis, the fourth level. But we can always look at the textbook later to decide. Okay, but this should be giving us sufficient guidance as to where or to what level our questions in our test should aim to assess. Okay, so I think we have looked at this in too detail. Let's just get right into constructing our TOS, because that's the point of me doing this video, right? So I'm just going to make it somewhat smaller, but still enough, large enough to be seen by both of us. So what I'm going to do is, first it's important to specify your topics and your subtopics. So I have merged the column for topics and subtopics because I think it will be easier for me to see when I refer back my TOS in light of doing my item. So I'm just going to type down here 1.0 Seni Halus. Is it large enough, guys, or is it too small? Maybe it's a bit small. So let's have 10 here. Okay, so for this video, let's just do one particular subtopic just to give you an idea. We will have a session where we will be developing this in more detail. So Seni Halus, so that's 1.0. You can just copy back 4.1 or 4.0 is fine, or start with 1.0. Either way, we know that in the curriculum, this is the first topic for that the test aims to assess. Okay. So since I'm doing questions for pendidikan seni visual, maybe I will type down the information for topics and subtopics in Bahasa Melayu. So 1.0 is seni halus, then we have 1.1. Definisi cetakan. Don't bother so much with, well, you need to bother, it has got to be perfect. Sorry. Definisi cetakan, you can say memberi definisi cetakan, but it's always better to phrase the statements in your TOS as concisely as possible. So type down definisi cetakan here. You have to think, how many items should I have in the test that measures students' ability to be able to provide definition of cetakan. So I think cetakan is not a very complex concept. Maybe one item is enough. So I'm just going to put one here. Please make sure that the level aligns. We do have different sizes. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, let's just do this. Let's make sure that they are all in standard size. Will be easier. All right, so I think one item is enough. By having one item, it is sufficient for me to look at whether students know the definition of cetakan. Now comes the second part, item type. So for this item, which item type I think is the best to allow me to ask this? So maybe you can have short answer. Short answer is wonderful to be asking for definition. Or you can also have multiple choice. Any objective questions is okay when it comes to measuring definition. So I think I'm just going to put multiple choice here. Okay. And for this multiple choice, I might want to have 20 multiple choice questions altogether in my test, and maybe 1 mark for each question. So I'm just going to type 1. Okay. So then I have to decide for this one particular subtopic, which level is the best level to represent this item. So since its definition, it will definitely be remember. Remember, we've just learned this last week. That was why we learned this, because it leads us to this week when we have to do table of specifications. Okay, talking too much. Need to stop talking and getting work done. Let's look at the second one. Memperihalkan tentang sejarah perkembangan seni cetakan. I'm such a bad person. I did not look up what memperihalkan is. To be honest, I'm not so sure what memperihalkan is. Maybe understanding. So I'm just going to write here, sejarah perkembangan seni cetakan. Now, please look at the DSKP. Under this particular subtopic, we have 2 subtopics. This is the time when we have to specify in more detail. So, sejarah perkembangan seni cetakan is still not that detailed. It's still general. So, I need to specify it further. Okay, so 1.2.1, pelukis cetak. Right? So, pelukis cetak, there might be 3 pelukis that students have to cover for this particular subtopic. Please remember, I'm not from arts education. My knowledge in arts education is terrible. So for the purpose of filling up this TOS, let's just say that in class, students learn 3 pelukis, okay? Or 3 artists of seni cetak. Then you have to decide, do I need to measure all these 3 artists, or can I just ask 1 artist? Maybe I have covered the other 2 artists in my classroom exercises, homework activities, or if you think that it is important to ask questions that represent all these 3 artists, then by all means, please do. If you think that 2 artists is enough because 1 is already covered in other assessment, then ask 2 artists. Okay? So say, for example, I want to ask about artist number 2, and I just want to create one. I'm just coming up with a name. So say, for example, artist B. Okay? So artist B, I would like to ask like 3 questions with regard to artist B. If they can answer these 3 questions correctly, then they have like awesome understanding of artist B already. So I'm just going to put artist B there. And because I have several questions on artist B, and this question represents many things, so I need to specify further. This is what I mean by specifications. You can have 1.211, but that will make your column congested. So I'm just going to put like this. Maybe academic background, latar belakang academic. Okay. And I cannot use the tab here. So this is going to make things much slower. Oh yeah, I can use this. Tak apalah, teruskan saja. Karya. Dan maybe one more because I did mention 3. Sumbangan. Kepada seni cetakan tanah air. Okay, let's not be bothered by the arrangement. Please be bothered by arrangement, but because I just want to get this over and done with, not because I want to be fast, but I think we need to pay more attention to filling up the rest of the sections here. Okay, so now we have really specified up to the T about the sub-content that we want to assess. So we have 3 pelukis cetak and we want to measure the knowledge of students on 2 pelukis or 2 artists. So we have the first one, artist B. So in the task, I want to ask questions that look at latar belakang akademik, karya-karya and contributions of artist B. So let's look at one by one in detailing. So for latar belakang akademik, maybe just one question. Okay. And for these questions, I will have it in the MCQ format. And because I've established 1 mark, so let's just put 1 mark here for each multiple choice questions that you have in your test. And since latar belakang academic is very factual, so when I ask these questions, it could be remembering. Okay, so at the point of doing your TOS, we are just planning. We have not really constructed the questions. But if you feel like when you are constructing your items later, oh my God, it's not remember, it's actually understanding, it's okay, no problem. You can always do these modifications on your TOS while you are developing your items. Okay, karya artist B. Maybe I want to have like 2 questions. And for these 2 questions, I will have 1 question multiple choice and the other one is short answer. Okay, I'll give you the abbreviation later. I don't want to be typing down short answer in a very long manner here. So my multiple choice, maybe 1 question and short answer 1 question. And I will have remember for my question on karya, multiple choice, and the other one is, understand. So just put your tick at the highest level. So if you think that for these questions, maybe not short answer because it is understand. So let's just put structured here. So if you think that this questions is analysis, so just tick analysis. You don't have to tick the level below. Okay. So for sumbangan kepada seni cetakan tanah air, so maybe 1 question, and I want them to be able to provide the depth of the knowledge and understanding. So I do want them to be able to elaborate. So maybe structured. And at this point, maybe you want to think earlier on, how many points do I need to ask? And if it's 2 points, then how many marks for each point and how many marks for elaboration? Okay, so maybe I'm going to give this 6 marks. So I'm expecting 2 points, a very brief explanation for each of the points, so 6 marks. And the intended level is analysis. Okay, so basically that's it. So say for example that we have a longer TOS. So remember that TOS is a document for your test and exam. And it should be structured according to the sequence of how the topics and subtopics appear in your DSKP, because this is the suggested sequence which you plan your lessons and carry out your lessons. So if the test is 1 hour, of course, you can have like 4 to 5 topics or subtopics here. And of course, your TOS will be longer. But this is just a practice for me to show how TOS is filled up. So after you have filled up all this, now, say for example, we have completed our TOS for 1 hour test, and we have 3 subtopics here, for example. And now I want to total up all my questions. So based on this information which I have presented earlier, we have 5 items in the test. This one you don't have to fill up, just leave it blank. And the total number of marks for this test is 9 marks. Okay, and I do have, okay, just bear with me. Since we have 2 items which look at Karya Artist B, and these 2 items represent different item format. So instead of putting 2 here, you need to put 1 here and 1 below, because it will be representing this and the other one for this. Okay, so for remember, I have 3 questions in the test that measures remembering skill. I have 1 item in the test that look at understanding, and I have 1 item in the test which measures analysis, cognitive process. Right. So with that, you have your TOS. It is not time consuming to fill up your TOS, but when you are filling up your TOS, it does get you to think about your test and to plan ahead of how your test is going to look like. So basically, that's your TOS, guys, based on this subject on pendidikan seni visual tingkatan 2. Alright, so I'm going to stop here. We will do the rest of this when we get into our online lessons this week. So thank you very much. Should you have any questions, don't forget to type down your questions underneath this video. So I wish you a productive week ahead. Take care and stay positive. Bye, guys.